So we've got regulars, Lorna Leeson and Kathy Brown, and very pleased to welcome Dana James Edwards as well. And I think today I'm particularly pleased with the panel we've got, because I think they're going to bring with them a real level both of expertise and also some lived experience around tough topics and the impact of how those are handled or not handled.
I think any chief executive or leader in an organisation knows inherently what some of these tough topics are flying around at the moment. It's the stuff that we get very concerned about. How do we address it? How do we talk about it? What do we do with it? Have we got a problem? And if so, how do we fix it? How do we even know? Some of the societal shifts and issues that have happened in particular have come to a head over the past few years. Things like trans rights, Black Lives Matter, an increased focus on equality and inclusion from a society perspective, an increased number of voices and concerns joining those conversations.
So I've had to approach a conversation with my board, who don't know me particularly well and I don't know them, about the fact that I've been diagnosed with a severe neurological condition. And that takes thought. And even for somebody with my level of confidence and experience, it was really hard to contemplate. And that's the human side of having a tough topic conversation in this way. How do you even start it? Yeah, it's a job of work, I tell you.
So for me, a tough conversation is one where you bring it up and the whole room goes silent. And there's almost that pause, that like intake of breath, and everyone looking around at the next person like, oh no. And I think strong leaders cannot shy away from tough conversations. And I think if you are able to get away with shying away from them now, it won't be that way for much longer. And people just cannot leave the world at the door when they come to work. They bring it with them. And they also want to know that the organization that they are part of, that they work for, that they have aligned themselves with, cares about who they are as individuals.
How do you avoid accusations of jumping on a bandwagon whilst at the same time demonstrating to your people, I mean, if we think about it from an internal organizational perspective, demonstrating to your people that this is something that as an organization you care about? Because it's difficult to find that balance, isn't it, sometimes?
I completely agree with you. And for me, part of that whole bandwagon-y thing comes from when organizations put out a public statement first, without thinking about the internal effects, and also without acknowledging some of the things that might not be quite right internally before they go out into the world. So I would say the first thing is, can we stop doing corporate blah, 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 blah? You're going to get found out, and try really to do the work to get your culture into the place where it really is lived, and where you really can come out and say, yes, this is what we stand for as a company, or yes, this is what we're working towards as a company, or for the love of God, we're not getting this right ourselves, but we agree that it's important and we're going to keep working on it, instead of everything is perfect and rosy here, go team.
It's a piece there around empathy and putting yourself in people's shoes and being open enough to realise that you as a leader don't have all the answers, and sometimes you're not going to know this stuff. But you need to be self-aware enough to know where your gaps and your biases are. And that's a real stretch sometimes. I mean, particularly for leaders, I think who've been leaders for a long time, you get very much set in your way of being and your way of thinking. And I mean, again, my current example is showing to me that I had very, very little understanding of how exclusionary some normal working practice is to people with neurodivergence.
And why do you think people do shy away from this, Lorna?
It's hard. So I think historically some of this stuff has been treated as a programmatic, or to Dana's point, a marketing exercise. So if I think about, there's a quote that it just sticks in my head, and I met a head of recruiting from a major UK bank a few years back. They were award-winning, her team. and she said to me, we've done really well with women this year. Unfortunately, because we focused on women, we haven't done so well with BAME. And I just thought, what if I'm a black woman? Which box are you putting me into, right? Because they was just kind of so programmatic in the measurement of a category. And this, I'm willing to bet, was an organisation that was still running fairly rigid, processes from a recruitment onboarding perspective.
One of the easiest ways I've found of highlighting to people how closed their thinking is I tell them 3 things about me. I say, I dye my hair green, I'm a Star Trek fan, and I'm a Morris dancer. And you can see people react to that stuff. And you just say to them, you have just made a value judgment on me based on 3 things that I've told you that are irrelevant to the way I lead, the way I live my life, but you've still done it in your brain. You've made a judgment, and they can't get away from it because they have. And there's such silly examples that people can admit that they have.
It takes a huge amount of humility to say that in a broader environment, actually, that is quite quick to shame leaders and organisations. And, I'm sort of on the fence about Cressida Dick, actually. I think if we call for the head of a leader every time there is an issue in their organisation, it's like football managers, right? How are they ever going to win the league if you change the manager I think we need to dial down the shame.
From a leader perspective, you could understand why they might think silence is the best course of action, because whatever I say, I am going to seriously annoy, and that's a polite word to put it, one body of my employees or the other. So actually, I'm going to just try and put my head down and ignore all of this. Now, why is that the wrong thing, Dana?
So firstly, I want to say that it's not that silence is the wrong course of action. It's what you are doing in the silence that matters. And so for leaders, I would say it is okay at the beginning of an issue to be silent if you don't know what it is, you don't know what the issues are, and you don't understand. It's okay to take some time in the silence to educate yourself, but also to speak to people within your organization who are affected by the issue, to learn more about it, to find out the way that they feel. Second thing I would say is that nature abhors a vacuum. So in the meantime, while you are silenced, a narrative is being written, whether you wanted to or not. And both sides, as you mentioned, are writing their own narrative about what your silence means. So actually, you might think that your silence is safe, but your silence is giving a message that you are no longer in control of. And that, for me, is always a mistake. So why do that, right? Now you have 2 groups of people and the outside world guessing about who you are, where you are, and what you think. That doesn't make sense in the grand scheme of things. And I also think, finally, that it is okay for a leader to say, I'm actually going to take the day and learn more about this, and then I'll get back to you with my thoughts, so that people know something is coming and there's not just dead air. If we're communicating, let's communicate all the way through so that people are with us. Let's be willing, if we're leaders, to share our journey.
Absolutely, Jo. It's exactly what we've always said about engagement. It's not an HR initiative. It's not the responsibility of your head of engagement. It's about building a culture in which behaving in that way is what you do unthinkingly every day. Because that then allows people to bring everything that they are to work, whether it's the green hair and the Star Trek obsession, or the Trinidadian background, or the neurodiversity, or whatever it is that they are able to bring it all and bring all of those strengths and weaknesses in, just as a person, just as a human being. Human beings at work, it's all we are.
Do you think, ladies, I'm directing Mr. Dana, all of you really, but there's something about the prevailing model of business and leadership over the past 100 or so years has been invulnerable, command and control, got it all right all the time, buttons up, don't bring your
apologies, weakness.
Apologies, weakness. Perfection is the goal. Let's not show the enemy in my arse, as an old colleague of mine from Stoke used to say.
I like that.
If that's the prevailing model of business and leadership, And what I've just heard the three of you describe, it's like let's just take it, turn it upside down, and do this to it. That's one of the challenges that we have, right?
Yes, because where do people learn this stuff? Where do people learn this stuff? Because, you know, in the organization, we learn from the people that have been our managers and our leaders, and we cannot help ourselves to follow the leader, literally, in terms of some of our behavioral styles. What are the business schools teaching? What are the schools teaching? What are the colleges teaching? You know, where do people learn to perhaps throw away some of those preconceptions? If many of the role models that are lauded on, particularly on reality television and TV shows and social media, are people that encompass many of those slightly toxic cultures.
How can you beat decades of a traditional way of doing something? But I think, you know, you have to start somewhere. And if you're not ready to confront it in a room full of other people, confront it with someone one-on-one. If you're not ready to start speaking out loud yet, read something, listen to a podcast, watch a video series, whatever it takes. But for some people, and especially those who are listening, who are wondering about what is my first step in this, because I am fearful, I am nervous, I don't think I'm ready to be so vulnerable yet. Start in a small and private way, and then work your way up from there. And nothing is wrong with that approach.
Any sort of final observations they want to make on this? Kathy?
Only that, as ever with these, we come right back around to the four enablers of engagement: listening to people, treating people as individuals, having a clear purpose and values and strategy, and doing what you say you're going to do, so that building trust.
I'm always going to bring it back to leadership and culture, Anne, and a new model, a new mode of those that enables you to be vulnerable and brave at the same time. And I think just challenging some of those, recognising and then challenging some of those paradigms of leadership and culture that have built up around us, and we're now having to kind of peel off as we go, and that's scary.
Absolutely. Lovely. Dana, any last comments?
For me, it's that organizations where it's the staff who are the driving force for inclusion are doing really well. But organizations where leaders are stepping out in front of that change are doing phenomenally. They're getting the change faster, it's filtering down the ranks, and there is so much opportunity for leaders to shape the face of inclusion, and they should do it. It's 2021. Do the thing.